What's going on, everybody? Thank you for joining us today. Today, we're going to be talking about Google Notebook LM. Why? Well, number one, it's probably one of the coolest research tools that's out there that is free for a lot of people. But number two, they actually just had some really cool announcements from Google. Two of those basically are that they're going to be adding deep research. I don't know when. And they're also going to be adding tutoring. When I saw those two things, those two announcements, I thought, okay, hold on. I have a very clear understanding, or I feel like I have a good understanding of what we're trying to do with Google Notebook LM, how it's integrating back into Gemini, and how Gemini is also influencing it. It's going both ways. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. But also, I thought it was just a good chance for us to just sort of share back with you guys, everybody listening out there, like, are you sure you know everything that Google Notebook LM can do right now? Never mind the tutoring and the deep research that are coming. And honestly, how you can sort of get around at least one of those. We'll show you that too. Because I think people are really stuck on it makes the audio podcast. And that is very cool. But honestly, if the only thing they shipped on was their mind map, I think you would find a lot of value just in that as well. So this is the Daily AI Show. Today is August 26, 2025. To join me in this deep dive, wonderful discussion around Google Notebook LM, we have Beth, Andy, Jyunmi. I'm Brian. And guys, let's jump right into this. So first things first, before we get into sharing screens, of which I have a couple of examples, and we can actually run some examples live. When you guys I saw Jyunmi, like you kind of shaking, nodding your head up and down as I was saying it with the intro, but like when you saw that they were going to be adding deep research and tutor to Notebook LM, like where did your brain go with this? Because I feel like this is like up right on the nose,
Yeah, there was a I don't know. Maybe I'm just extrapolating a little too hard, but with all the news of the study modes, right?
Mm-hmm.
We know that ChatGPT and other LLMs or AI is used by students of all levels, right? K through 12, college, all of that, and we're coming up on all the kids going back to school. So I think as a ramp up, we've heard news about the study and learn from OpenAI. We've heard of learning options from Gemini and Claude in the past, and things like that. And I think this is Google really just running with what they have with Notebook LM, right?
Mm-hmm.
It Everybody seemed to love it. Got so much news, so much play that it started off as a Google Labs project. So that's usually a hit or miss, one or done. This is where we get to experiment, but people love it. So they just let them loose, and they've just been adding feature and feature and combining things too, because they also have a research focused version called Learn LM,
Mm-hmm.
which was supposed to break down research papers. And a lot of what's been done in both sides of those applications are integrated with each other now, right? Especially like audio previews and now video previews in Notebook LM. So by adding these extra features, you really have a very strong learning tool. And I think that's the biggest thing, right? You touch on a bunch of different learning modalities. You have a way to have people absorb information in many different ways or many different combinations, so that it best fits for them. Google has a interconnection with the ed tech market through both their educational access to workspaces, which Notebook LM is now part of, and then their own Google School framework and things like that. So I think because of the time period, the ramp up, the sort of trend of adding these study modes and legitimizing the use of AI to learn,
Mm-hmm.
they've got a really strong case here. And if they can just get people to adopt it, then this may be the new hot tool that everybody is using to study and learn whatever's they're working on.
Yeah, I mean, Beth, I know you have gone in. I'm gonna get it wrong. Where do you do the? Where's like the free Google where you can do the coding? You've used it before.
AI Studio.
Oh, not yes.
But you
That's not
mean
what
collab.
Collab is what I was thinking of. Thank you, Andy.
Oh,
But yeah,
yes.
sorry, I said it kind of weird. I know. But yes, collab is what I was thinking of. Like, Beth, do you see maybe a world where maybe there's an integration, since we kind of see Google shooting, certain technologies back and forth. Some are landing into Gemini out of Notebook. You said Learn LM sort of became guided learning, right? And it was like we see this sort of meshing across the boundaries in and out of labs and stuff like that. But I'm almost curious, like, is it like a Google Notebook LM plus Colab almost like a sort of a perfect tool for learning how to code and doing those kind of things? It almost seems like I could see that happening too.
I could sort of, because they already have a Gemini tutor in Colab. So they're doing it with without the notebook. The notebook would put it somewhere else. But I think that Logan Fitzpatrick, Logan with a Fitz last name, Kilpatrick, maybe not a Fitz last name, Logan, who used to work at OpenAI and now works at Google, is I believe he's in charge of the relationship between the devs and like the AI projects. And he is incredibly responsive. So Logan, sorry for screwing up your last name, but if you're listening to the show, because I know you all do, this is a pretty cool idea to integrate Notebook LM and Colab.
Yeah, I'll try to find his name. Why, Andy, you throw in your thoughts on this. But Logan, he said he worked at OpenAI. No, where first and then Google?
He worked at OpenAI first, and then
all right,
and then he moved to Google.
Okay,
Andy,
so
yeah.
here's my take on Notebook LM. So we're watching in real time the evolution of a platform that started out, I think, really as a simple experiment inside labs to provide a document or a set of documents and then create chat with those documents, which is a very basic sort of chat with your documents kind of implementation. But since most people don't love to type and, try to think of what questions they want to ask, the smart researchers in Google Labs added that digest function, the studio side of Notebook LM, including the podcast, which makes it so that you can just sit and listen now. Okay, I've been using Notebook LM for a while, really as that explainer mode. So I don't want to. I don't have the time to read a whole archive document that's on complex technical subjects. So I put it up there, and then I start to listen to the thing, but I don't have the patience to listen for 10 minutes. So I say, okay, give me the study guide. And now I've got these tools that let me digest that very quickly, point and click, generating a model of what's in that complex discussion in the PDF that I just uploaded. And that's how far I went with it for a while. But now they added video, which adds another dimension. So you can not just listen and me get distracted and bored and leave it. But now I can actually see some visuals, some infographics that are associated with what's being said. And that helps me understand. So there's an additional pedagogical cue that's going in there. And then what I've started to evolve, I've begun to evolve with their evolution of the tool, because now instead of my Notebook LM list of notebooks being mostly one or at most two PDFs that are about a single subject, I'm starting to create notebooks that are domains of interest that I have in the world of AI or elsewhere, but domains. So for example, we talk at length about the emergence of AI reasoning and that as a part of the path towards AGI. So now I can make sync. Now I've changed my model from doing explainer on a single complex PDF to I'm going to put a bunch of documents into this knowledge store on the subject of AI reasoning and its developments. And now I have a collection that I'm curating that is the basis of what I want to then later generate sort of summaries and explainers out of that are useful and can keep up to date, because I can continuously generate new versions of those in the NotebookLM interface. And then the pièce de résistance is they're going to add the guided learning mode to that, because the next advance in the pedagogical progression of this is not just me getting a summary and having to read it, or listening to or watching while I listen to an explainer video, in effect. But now I'm going to interact dynamically with the knowledgeable tutor that's in there, that's going to do additional research and thinking while I'm in the conversation with it. But it has reference collection of the documents that I provided at the same time. So this is really getting rich. And I've actually just last night, as part of this, I went to Gemini application online, and I used the guided learning mode to go after this question, like, talk to me about the difference between reinforcement learning and reinforcement learning with human feedback, and how those are distinct and different, and how they fit into a progression of the development of advanced reasoning and models. And I can share later, what that looks like, because you can expose the thinking that it has, and it really becomes a very rich dialogue with a deeply thinking tutor that's trying to help you understand, and the interaction of that is really something that you'll remember far beyond what would happen if you just listened to a video explainer.
100%. And I think you kind of nailed it. Like you said, like where they're going with this, you said tutor, but up until now, notebook hasn't really been thought of as being something that goes out beyond the documents. It's quite literally a notebook. The name is good. You could call it the Google file folder LM, or the brief, file case LM or something. Because like, that's the idea. You put in all these documents, it's your trapper keeper, right? And you put in all these documents, you're like, okay, this is the subject or the topic, and everything in here goes together. And so I want to go ask questions, but instead of me having to peek into each of the documents or open up the Trapper Keeper, I could actually leave it shut. And NotebookLM allows me to peer inside across all the documents of different types of sources. Now, in that Trapper Keeper, I might have images, I might have documents. Maybe back in the day, I would have had a USB drive that maybe perhaps had a video on it, or had some audio on it as well of a professor's lecture, or whatever it might have been. You went to a conference and you watched somebody. It could have had all those things in there. And NotebookLM is making it possible to go across all those different types of data types, plus them just being disparate and in general being, mixed and matched, and then be able to ask questions. Now, when you add in tutor, as you said, we can assume that will probably be like guided learning, but maybe it'll actually be a little bit more tutor than guided learning. I'm not sure if they mean the same thing when they say tutor versus guided learning. But also the deep research. The deep research really is going to unlock NotebookLM's ability to now go beyond the documents. So you say, well, hold on a second. If they're just going to make Google NotebookLM ability go at it, why don't I just either create a gem and throw all the documents into gem, use guided learning, throwing deep research, and didn't I sort of net out the same place? But I think if I had to guess, Google is thinking differently about NotebookLM and where it sits as its own sort of product versus just wrapping everything into Gemini. And I think it makes sense to have a place where you can store things in a very organized folder method. And that's what really more a notebook method, right? Just like you would for topics in, that you're studying or otherwise. So
yeah, so here, let me add what I think I'll use deep research for inside NotebookLM. So I explained how I used to just say, okay, here's a document that I want an explainer on. I want to learn about this document. Now I have a collection that's in NotebookLM, and I have that collection, but I only put in the things that I stumbled upon. And I don't know what the world of research is around that subject that could be added to that collection. And so I expect that deep research will be added. I'll click a button, and basically that button will, or I'll ask it, I'll click on deep research in the NotebookLM UI, and I'll say, find me other research papers and articles and news publications and blogs and TikTok videos and all these things, YouTube videos probably in the Google world. Find me all these things that are related to that, and then rank them so that I can then add them to the collection if I feel that they're useful references for this area of exploration that I'm after.
I think that's exactly it. I mean, it will probably be a source on the side, and you're adding a source, but your source would be deep research. And so, by the way, you can do this right now. You can, this exists, but you have to do it in 2 steps. And it's not as good as what Andy just said it was, right? Because this last resource, in this particular one, I'm showing on my screen something called the AI SOW Manifesto, Discipline Execution AI Solutions. Okay, what does that mean? Why did I share this? Well, this is a real use case for me. My boss, Jake Dunlap, my CEO, we were talking about the AI work that I'm doing at scale has kind of exploded lately. All of a sudden it went like from a trickle to a full-on fire hose, which is a great thing to happen. We're busier than ever, hiring people, the whole shebang. Also, what that means though is that if you've been moving along with kind of half sort of processes along the way, that stuff will bite you in the butt real quick when you have to scale very, very quickly, which is something I'm currently dealing with. It's just part of it. And Jake's like, have you ever read the book, The Checklist Manifesto? And I was like, no, I mean, I haven't, and he's like, well, it's like, when pilots, they have to go through their list, and they talk about how like this wasn't necessarily something that was done in hospitals, but once they sort of came out with this idea of having a checklist, it reduced mortality, it reduced, it had all these major impacts. I thought, wow, that actually resonates with me. In college, for about 20 hours, I took flying lessons. I never got to a part where I got my pilot's license, unfortunately, but in early 2000, 97, 98, 99, somewhere in that range, I would go to the local airport in Athens, Georgia. I think it was called Ben Epps Airport, and I would learn to fly. Initially, it was a Cessna 2-seater, and then it was a Cessna 4-seater, and then somebody crashed that, and they were okay. And then I had to go to a Piper Cherokee Warrior low wing versus a high wing that was also 4-seater. Felt like driving a Rolls Royce versus a Vespa, the difference between those 2 planes, right? However, one of the things I absolutely had to do every single time was go through a checklist. That is mandatory when you're going to fly a plane, just like you should for a lot of things, right? When my daughter starts driving, she will have to go through a checklist for the car, things that she should be paying attention to until they become such rote memorization. So anyway, Jake was saying, have you read this book? Nope, haven't read this book. Now, one option is go read the book, Brian, but I'm not going to go read the book. Like, I'm not going to buy the book and go read the book. I felt like this is probably something that had been around in the internet for quite some time. So up here, you can see on the left, I have anything that's got the red, play button on it is from YouTube. So this guy right here is from YouTube. Checklist Manifesto, How to Get Things Right. This one is Mind Map something book summary. A couple other of these are like audio book summaries. This one's a PDF up here. This one down here is Google Deep Research. So, okay, hold on. You just said it doesn't exist. Well, it doesn't, but that doesn't stop me from going over to Google Gemini and doing the deep research, then taking the deep research and putting it back in Google Notebook LM. Now, I am not getting all the lovely parts about getting all the cited sources that are going to come into this deep research. And I agree with you, Andy. An even better version would be, not only does it pull through and do the deep research for you directly in Notebook LM, it also pulls through all the cited sources, because they in themselves become places that I can then go and ask questions against. It makes Notebook LM very, very powerful. So we can actually see a version of this on this one. Now, I didn't create this. This is just one of the examples Notebook LM will show you when you open it up. And if we look, you can see here, this is called the Economist World Ahead 2025. It was done in July 7th, and it has 70 sources. And then I'll tell you, that's not even like close. So you can now do over 100. And I know that because I threw like 100 different transcripts of our show in there. to a different notebook, and it didn't have a problem. So you can see here
300 is the max source number right now is 300.
300
for pro account.
Amazing. That's so much. So these look to be all documents, and I would have to go in to kind of see an idea of. It looks like they're all maybe economist blogs or articles, which is kind of cool that they built it like that. I think that's a cool use case. So this might be a curation of a bunch of economists, blogs or resources and different papers they've written or otherwise. And then you're able to ask questions against it underneath the sort of the global heading of the world ahead. What I want to make sure everybody knows exists is what, Andy, you were talking about, which is on the studio side here. So let's just click back over to my other example so we can see the full thing. But up here on studio on the right-hand side, with NotebookLM, you have these 3 panels. Your left panel is your sources. Your middle panel is your chat. That always does. Everybody asks me where this came from. Like every time I talk to a client, they're like, well, who wrote that? I said, it wrote that. Google wrote that, like really quickly, just as a summary. And then you have sort of some short cuts over to these studio part, things you can save as a note, and you can obviously copy the summary. But mostly you can just start asking things against these sources. So I could say, tell this to me in a story mode, right? Tell me as analogy, things you guys know I already like. But Google NotebookLM is already here to try to help us with that. And so over here on the right-hand side, we're familiar with the audio overview. That's the podcast feature. By the way, a lot of people don't realize that you can customize it. So you don't just have to take what it gives you as the first audio feature. Now up here, you can change the languages. So we know that can be done. That's within the last 6 months, they added different languages in there. But I can also customize this to make sure. Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, they just this past week, they increased the number of languages to 80. There are now 80 languages. So now globally, users of NotebookLM can do all the things that you're talking about here.
And that's, if you go to settings here, that's an output language for anybody. You got dark and light mode, output settings. You can share it. And also this analytics up here, by the way, is if I share this with the team, with Beth, Jyunmi, Andy, Karl, Aaron, right? If I shared it with everybody, then you guys would be able to then, I would be able to see the analytics as the builder to see how you're interacting with the NotebookLM. So just think, if I was a teacher, I might build this for my students. My wife is just starting her new internship program, like she does one every year for dietetics. And so she's literally got all of her interns are in town with her this week. It's the official kickoff to basically their program that will culminate in a year with them taking their RD exam and hopefully getting certified and being registered dietitian. But it kind of kicks off this week. So you can imagine my wife, Amanda, can build one of these and say, look, this is I've already curated the sources for you as your instructor, as your guide. I've already curated what I think are quality sources. I've already built it. And you guys can go in and do this, this, and this. And I'm going to be checking on the analytics to see if you're actually using this resource I built for you, because it's important that you do, right? And so she could actually look at that. But beyond just the audio overview, real quick, before we kind of get into a little more conversation, I want to make sure people know that, like as you said, Andy, it's got the video overview, which we can see right here. And so if we were to click and play that and then open it up, it's going to do a narrated slideshow, essentially. And it does okay. It's not, I don't think you're going to turn around and build a class off of this or whatever.
And finally, teamwork. Using that checklist as
so it's just kind of running through the information. But to me, I will tell you, this guy down here, which is mind map, I kind of think is the most valuable of all of them. So if I click on the mind map here and it opens up, starting on the left, just as you would expect it to, it starts with the broad topic and then breaks out. And then I can kind of zoom in and zoom out, and I can drag and drop just as you would expect you could. So that even alone is a nice little just UX. It's easy to use. If I was to click on any one of these, what it's going to do is immediately bring me back into Google NotebookLM. It's going to close this window, and it's going to auto-populate, because it's assuming, hey, Brian wants to know more about the solution checklist. But if I click on any of the arrows, that will then take me out to the breakout of any of those. So then if I'm trying to learn this, my boss is like, hey, I think this is a valuable book, but I've gone beyond the book. I've gotten other people's, I've done the deep research on it. So now if I wanted to go in and have, I wanted to look up cognitive capacity. And now if I click on that, you'll see it keeps it here on the right, but on the other side, it says discuss what these sources say about frees up cognitive capacity in the larger context of solution checklists. So just by doing that, what Google did was it basically wrote a prompt that said, hey, he clicked here. How does that interact with what was the larger context of solution checklist, which is where it broke out of? So it's just a really easy way. And you can see how absolutely fast that was. And what I really love about this is it's also telling me where the sources came from that it got this answer. So you're getting this nice mind map. You're getting the answer here, but you're also getting validation of where over here in the sources it came from. I would be a little concerned if all of them came from the deep research. And I'd be like, ooh, that it over indexed on the deep research from Google or Gemini. Not that it might be bad, but I might care that it got it from one of these. And that might be an indicator that maybe perhaps I should get rid of one of these sources in order to ensure that what I'm seeing is a little bit more in line with whatever I'm trying to learn. So before anything else, I just want to make sure people really understood how valuable NotebookLM is currently. You can kind of get around the deep research by doing it yourself in Gemini and just pulling it in as a net new resource. So that works for that. And they don't have anything that's the guided learning like they do in Gemini right now. So that doesn't currently exist, and you wouldn't really be able to my knowledge, prompt your way around that. But
you could ask NotebookLM to create a study guide or a summary of everything that's in there.
Yep.
And then just paste that into Gemini and click on guided learning and say, I want to learn about this.
Yeah, and it does have the study guide on it. You're right. So when I do here, I'll just show it on the screen again. This is the study guide that it created on the right-hand side of the screen. It's under reports. So just so everybody knows where that is, under reports, there's actually a drop down. You can get a briefing doc, a study guide, an FAQ, or a timeline. And so there's study guide. And then if I go right here, you can actually see they're labeled. So that's the FAQ. That's the study guide. It's already created. And then if I click on it, as you were just saying, Andy, I can grab it.
It's quite an extensive, really comprehensive list of everything that it surfaced from all of the sources that were there.
Yep. And then so I can come, as you were saying, I can back over here into, now I'm just in Gemini, right? There we go. Here, guided learning on the bottom. And then I could say, probably use the following information to teach me about the topic, right? I don't even, don't even have to go crazier than that. And now I'm just going to paste in literally what Andy just suggested to do. And now because we have guided learning turned on inside of Gemini.
Now open up thinking, click on the show thinking. It's worth reading that part as part of the tutelage.
Yeah, good call. So analyzing possible starting points. Then it's got refining the approach, framing the conversation. And then it says, if we collapse that, says, it looks like you have a really detailed study guide for the Checklist Manifesto. It's a great book with powerful central idea, how we can manage an incredible complexity of modern work. To get us our discussion started, where would you like to dive in? We could unpack the core problem. We could look at the solution, or we could examine the human element. And of course, I could just say like 3, and then we could go, it would just take me right into that. And again, you could look at the delving. I haven't seen delve in a while.
Yeah, it's
delving
good.
into the resistance. I haven't seen delve in there quite a bit. So then what I love about all of these, both what ChatGPT and Google do, is, how might you feel about the new rule and why? So it's making sure that not only is it giving me information, it's asking my opinion and making me critically think about it, which is critical, right? So this being put directly into NotebookLM in here is going to be really, really powerful, because now even more so, my wife, as an example, could give this to all her interns for the new program, and she could be monitoring how they're going through the study learn and saying, hey, you have a test on next Friday, and I can see the analytics of how you're using this study guide that I put together for you. I curated for you. And so if you're not using this, and I can't see you asking the questions and going deeper and asking for stories or analogies or whatever your mode is for learning, your modality, well, then you're not doing the necessary work to be prepared for this test. She could also continue this process on until she had essentially multiple notebooks over the course of a year's worth of classes and stuff that she'll be going through, and then give them something that ultimately becomes a massive study guide on the main tenets that are inside the registered dietetic exam that people have to pass, because they can't practice obviously as dietitians without it. So you can see how this could level up. Now, I give you a business use case. That's an education use case, but there's fun use cases. I mean, if Jyunmi invited me over to play D&D, I'd be like, I don't. Yes, and as Beth would say, but also no, because I don't know anything about it and I feel really insecure and I wouldn't know what to do. And so I might throw a couple of resources into a Google Notebook LM, unbeknownst to Jyunmi, in order to try a little bit smarter when I arrived at his house. With a bunch of other people who clearly knew what was going on, and I would not want to feel out of place. So there's 1,000 different ways that this can be helpful in somebody's life. It doesn't necessarily have to be academics. It doesn't necessarily have to be work. It could just be something you feel like you want to brush up on. Another use case, I can go into Notebook LM and I can give it all the electronic PDF docs. When I moved into this house 2 years ago, it was a brand new house. And if for anybody that's had a new house, you've had a house built or whatever, at some point they hand you over a notebook, literally, of like a bunch of paper PDFs. So like, this is how your microwave works. This is how your range works. This is how whatever here's your fridge, not your fridge, but you know what I mean? Like, this is the stuff that came with the house. I have a tankless hot water heater at this house. I've never owned one before that. I had to learn how, like a year ago, how to flush it, because once a year you need to how to flush it. All right. So I went online and I bought the tubes and I flushed the system. It's not a big deal. But I can take all those PDFs. I can find them probably all online. They're all digital. I can throw all of them into Notebook LM. Then I could throw in stuff about, I don't have one, but like a Ring doorbell. I could throw one in about, just name it, that has to do at my house, and have one Notebook LM that's like the central place that I go to ask questions when things go awry at the house. And I'm like, how do I do that? And it's like, well, Brian, based on the PDF manual of your range, this is where you would find that replacement part. Here's its number. Here's where you get that dial that just broke, blah, blah, blah. And here's what you need to go look up on, Amazon or whatever it is to do it. A lot of really cool ways to think about using this. And again, in that case, a mind map would be really helpful. You can imagine looking at the mind map of like your house going, and all the areas. It breaks it out to kitchen. It breaks it out to whatever, right? Your garage, otherwise, your main components, those kind of things. So one of the other things I did too that I would use in something like this, it doesn't quite do it yet with images, but before they closed up all my walls, I went through this house and took pictures of everything as studs. And that helped me within 3 months when we had an initial leak, because I was able to have x-ray vision of the entire house. And it was the smartest thing I've done in a long time, that I thought to do that before they closed up the walls, because I was able to go, well, look, here's the picture. And that appears to be the trap underneath our toilet in our master. And he's like, that's where the leak is. And then he opened up the ceiling exactly there and was able to find it because he knew exactly what was above the spot. So you could imagine in the future, I might be able to throw 40 images at this, and it might be able to ask questions. I might be able to ask questions against all those images too. It's not a today thing, but it's certainly a tomorrow thing. All right, I've talked a lot, but I get excited about this tool because I think of how cool it is and where it's going. And what I really want to do is just make sure people had more context of like, oh, I can go do this or I can go do that with it. But let me throw it back to you guys. Where, Jyunmi, Beth, what are you guys thinking? Where are you guys? Are you using it? Are you going to use it more? What are you thinking?
So I keep thinking that I need to be using it more, and specifically for things we've been talking offline about Claude Code. Karl is suggesting again that when we talk about problems that we're having, specifically Andy, but I'm hanging on like me, right? Like I should use Claude Code too. Come on. And in that context, I have 2 private videos, like 5 YouTube videos, Nate Jones's like 170 million page guide to things like those kinds of things, that it would be really helpful to amass all of that information and then be able to ask those things back and forth. And I keep looking. Didn't YouTube say that they were going to come out with you can just ask questions of a video, but it isn't there as far as I can see. So this I believe is still the best place, where if you have a bunch of YouTube videos and you want them all to be considered in your question, not just the first 2 minutes or not just however else it's doing it, maybe doing a lot of transcription of that. I think this is still the best tool for that. And I just find that really exciting, because I want the 2.5 minutes of the video, right? Like I want the 2.5 minutes of the video that starts at minute 37. And like he's showing a screen, so there's nothing exciting on it. It's all dark with tiny little white words, and then we're done, right? And that is super hard to find in any other context other than being able to search the transcript or ask a question in this context. And if I don't remember what words he used, searching the transcript is not going to help me.
Right.
But in NotebookLM, I can say, all right, it was after he talked about, like how to make sure that your AI image has shoes. And then he said something and I want to know what it is, right? Like those kinds of questions. I find that really helpful.
I think conferences could do a really cool thing, like where they start giving, like conferences will have, what do they call them? Like not blocks. Sometimes they'll call them blocks. So they'll just call them like paths. So like, you could take path A or B or C, because there's like so many sessions going on.
I think they use the term tracks.
Thank you. So the different tracks you could do at a conference. I'm not saying a large conference, like a large one maybe do this. Like I'm thinking like Snowflake, their conference is probably too big. But if you're a smaller conference and you're trying to kind of make a name for yourself, I could imagine how you would, at the end of day one, somebody could then turn that around into a notebook to then share with people so they could ask questions about things they learned in day one or were said across maybe a track or maybe whatever. I mean, there's a lot of like cool ways. I think truthfully, if we all just brainstormed here, we could think of cool ways NotebookLM could be used as a small business in a local town. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you could think about differentiating yourself by using a tool like this.
Or a community that gathers around a podcast live stream about cool AI tools.
I don't know anyone. If I knew any, I could tell you that.
Can I ask you, because I haven't used the feature, tell me how you've used the share feature, which, the UI of it looks very similar to sharing a Google document or sheet. And it has the same permissions architecture for that. But there's also analytics. Are those analytics about the sharing? And how just explain in a little blurb here how you're using the share feature.
So if you open analytics, like for this one, I hadn't shared it with anybody. It says no analytics. I had to see analytics. This topic needs to be shared with at least four other users and have some chat activity within the past 7 days. And it says note analytics update approximately every 24 hours. So they're not super, super fast. I have not used I've used share quite a bit, but I haven't really dug in a lot to the analytics for my use cases. So I would have to dive in a little bit more and figure out like what analytics I'm getting back in terms of like whether the four of y'all are using it and I would do it right now, but if it's only going to update every 24 hours, we're not going to have an answer quite as fast as we might like to, but maybe that's something we can do.
It seems like they've already built into it a feature which would allow you to use it in a public context and get and analyze the interactions that people in the local population that you're addressing it to are using, whether that's a classroom group or it's in the municipal context. You could have a resource built around the NotebookLM platform that gives them tools that can digest and summarize automatically in a emerging and education oriented UI. I think that's an interesting direction for it.
This, for me, this is a, hey, let's be a little cautious about this, because one of the things that is so good about this is that it can meet people where they are. If where I am is I learn better when I mind map myself, which actually, if you go back to the people who created mind mapping and said it was a really great idea, it's about writing it down. It's about chunking the information. They recommend that you continue to make your mind maps. Once you've learned something, you chunk it down even further, right? Like if I'm that kind of person, I don't want to get dinged because I didn't meet the analytics of your cool digital tool that doesn't help me learn. Like I think the back end of all of this is like, there's so many ways you could learn stuff.
You're going beyond the use of analytics to, see what people are interested in and what their, stumbling blocks might be, instead to the use of assessment tools inside an educational context. And then let's be careful about, making generalizations about, you're only going to learn this if you have used the mind map, for example. Is that your line of reasoning there?
One of the things that Brian said early on was that his wife could say, hey, I know you're not using this because I can see on the analytics.
Oh, okay.
I would want to invite that conversation, right? Are you actually not studying? Come sell me on why you haven't used this, because you still want to make sure people...
So the analytics, which we haven't looked at yet, but it'll be interesting to see, is it largely about engagement, or is it, basically giving the developer of the shared notebook insight into what people are finding useful? Not what is this individual finding useful.
Right. It's the same thing. I have read things about teachers being suspicious about handing in a paper as a Google document, who can see in the Google document that you only spent 2 minutes in the Google document or 3 minutes in the Google document, because that means you've copied from AI and pasted in the Google document. You don't know what I copied it from. I dictated the shit out of this. I'm messy. I wrote stuff. I did all kinds of things. And then I gave you my very neat copy. That kind of stuff. Like, no, you can't do that. You must do it all in the Google document. Like,
I agree with you. It doesn't meet everybody's learning standards. My wife, actually, funny enough, the irony of this is I'm like, oh, she could give the thing. My wife is very much a work in silence, which I don't understand because I have to work with music on. But she will commandeer she works for the Department of Health in Florida. She will commandeer a conference room if she has a really large project, or if she's like trying to map out, for lack of a better term, how she's going to do changes to her curriculum and things like that as part of her job. And she likes a lot of papers physically spread out in space. To your point, Beth, like she's going to do a lot of that by writing in handwriting and notes and scribbles. And that's just how her brain works before it would ever reach to digital. And you're right. If she was being graded upon, we want to see your work, which I understand why, because like for the AI side of things, and by the way, my daughter's school is like that. So it's funny you mentioned that. That would be a bit of a ding on my wife, because by the time it got to that Google document, it would not be representative of all the work she had done in physical space. Like she would have to take pictures of it, I guess, and be like, no, this is what I did before it got to the digital area, because that's how my brain works and how I have to spread things out and look at them. And, she's brilliant. My wife's brilliant. So like it clearly works for her. It would drive me nuts to do that if I had to have all that paper and stuff. So I would actually rather do it in the digital side. But you're right. It kind of plays to my strengths and plays to a weakness for her, which is not fair, because she's probably doing, let's be honest, if it's my wife, she's probably doing more work than I am to be prepared. So it's like, it's kind of dinging her for something she's probably not doing. So
we're glad you said it, and none of us,
What, that my wife is the smarter one in our relationship?
Doing more work.
Yeah. Listen, I've said consistently that my wife is the smarter one in this marriage. So she's pretty brilliant at what she does. So I'm usually just trying to play catch up and keep up with her. So all right. Well, look, hopefully this is helpful. Like what I wanted people to get out of this was just like, man, I thought it just did a really good job with those cool podcasts. I didn't realize it did this other stuff. Also, wow, Google is investing in this area. I think that's even as more important to me is like they're adding deep research into it. They're adding the tutoring into it. Google clearly sees a path forward in education, learning management systems, whatever, for NotebookLM. It's not something that emerged out of labs and we think maybe I don't get the impression at this point where I did maybe a month or two ago that Notebook might just get wrapped into Gemini and sort of disappear. And now I actually don't think that's the case. But literally that's the last month, right? So just how quickly some of these things sort of change. And maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe eventually all of this will just be part of Gemini. But I really do love that it's separate, that you have this place to go. You can create a notebook for a topic or multiple topics or however you want to break it down that makes sense for you. And you can organize it in a smart way. That part I really, really love. And I'm sure it will continue to connect to Google Drive. It will probably connect out to other actions. It'll be able to take actions and do agentic type things in the future, just like you can from Gemini. So just think about that. Like not only could you probably start a NotebookLM in the near future, but it will connect to other places and be able to go put those notes, those studies or whatever in other locations that are now outside of NotebookLM. So we know all this stuff exists. So it's just a matter of the connectors right along the way. So that's it. Coming up the rest of this week, just like, so you guys know, tomorrow we have the news as always, because it's Wednesday and Jyunmi will be headlining and running that. Thursday, we're running a lean ship with, I think it's just Andy and Jyunmi. And you guys will be talking about Google's AI dominance, comprehensive analysis of recent advances. It's a mouthful, but basically what it is like, hey, what did Google do? It's a double Google kind of week. It's like, hey, what did Google do? What did they just recently announce and what does it mean? Right. So that'll be on Thursday's show. And then Friday is going to be just more of an open-ended. It's, sometimes we'll call it the squirrel show. It's really just like, what are we interested in talking about at the moment that show comes up? It might be a little bit of news. It might be a little hot topics. It might be stuff that's just crossed our digital desks along the way, and we just think it's interesting and we want to talk about it. We like those shows. They're a lot of fun, and so we'll be doing that on Friday. So that's the rest of this week. Of course, lots more stuff coming up next week and beyond, but that's what we have coming up the rest of this week. But hey, don't forget, you can go over to the Daily AI Show community by going to thedailyishowcommunity.com and signing up for our Slack community. It's free. If you want to keep the conversation going, if you like these kind of discussions, go there as well, because it's somewhere where you can keep them going. You can learn a thing or two. If you want to sign up for our newsletter, you can go to our regular website, thedailyishow.com, and sign up for the newsletter there. It goes out once a week on Sundays. We've been doing it for over a year now. It's not just a summary of these shows. It's got more in it. Takes a deeper dive, a deeper look, a different look at the different topics that we've come across this week, but also goes into other areas as well. Also a free resource. If you like to nerd out on AI, then you'll like that newsletter as well. So that's it. We'll wrap it up there, but I hope this was helpful to everybody. I hope we hear people saying they used it and they have some cool use cases and everything else. But until tomorrow with the news, we'll say goodbye for now.
Aloha.